Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
First, a word from our sponsor. The Daily Compliance News for March 24, 2023, a cluster at Treasury. We begin with that story from the Wall Street Journal, Risk and Compliance Journal, Dylan Tokar reporting that FinCEN's efforts to implement shell company laws is just one big cluster and has drawn incredible criticism from the widest variety and disparate groups of institutions, individuals, and others. This was around the process of building out the corporate ownership database to tamp down on the use of anonymous shell corporations. Almost 2 years into this, we still don't have, or over 2 years into the process, we still don't have any sort of structure around this from FinCEN. And what they put in place is just absolutely inane. They are not going to require companies to identify their owners. They're be able to mark unknown about key owners. And they're not going to give banks access to the information, which is the whole point around the database to start with. So hopefully they'll go back to the drawing board. But as it is, it's just terrible now. Next up, from the Los Angeles Times, if you didn't know, corruption in California's cannabis industry is both widespread and brazen. Pay-to-play schemes, including demand for cash, for licenses, threats against local officials, and city council accepting cash when they're supposed to regulate them is prevalent, ubiquitous even, and the state of California says it's going to clean it up. Good luck. Next up, from the Financial Times, the culture clash between UBS and Credit Suisse is just beginning. So when you think about the culture clash when you engage in a merger and acquisition, well, now think about it in terms of the biggest staid Swiss banking icon caricature you can think of, UBS, and the Credit Suisse folks who lived on the edge. Of course, they failed, so they're not living on the edge anymore. But it's going to be a long, long time to get these cultures together. And I can only think back when AOL bought Time Warner and destroyed Time Warner in that process. And our final story comes to us from the BBC, where in England, IKEA has been told to protect workers from sexual harassment. So not here in the United States, but I hope it's not going on here as well, but pretty bad for IKEA employees in the UK going. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow.